right? And I will tell you, if you haven't seen it, it is one of our most controversial videos.
Yes.
People hated what we said in that video, and to be fair,
Well,
we
I
were
mean,
very new to EVs and
yes.
to it, and we were literally reporting on an article that we
It,
read. Hey, everybody, big news at Tesla. John and I are here to talk about it. We're
oh
going to
boy.
talk about what's going on with Tesla's stock prices, with Tesla in general, and with the Tesla Cybertruck. So, John, let's get
Oh
into it,
boy.
buddy.
Dude. Tesla is, oh my gosh, man. It's a wild ride over there at the Tesla dealerships at the moment.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I mean, people know that we're not the biggest EV car fans, right? And it's not because we hadn't necessarily have anything against EV. But and there's some EVs out there that I do like. I put my order in for a Scout, which is EV hybrid sort of thing.
I think the
But
Hummer EV is pretty cool, and I think
I
the Tesla
I'm a
Cybertruck is
huge
actually kind of
fan.
neat.
I'm a huge fan of the Hummer EV.
Yeah.
I really do like that vehicle. And I don't know why. I think maybe it's a little bit because it's cool and nostalgic at the same time. But
But Tesla, ooh,
yeah, but the truth of the matter is, whether you like Tesla or don't like them, they paved the way for the EV. They made it. They
absolutely,
made EV possible. And
yeah,
so for the people who want to choose EV, it's really because of Tesla that they have that ability to do it.
that's right.
But in recent, I mean, it's been nuts. You
Dude,
look at Q1 alone, John, you and I were just talking about this. Their revenue overall decreased by 9%. Their auto
yes.
revenue decreased by 20% in Q1. They sold 50,000 less cars, less vehicles in Q1 than they did in Q1 last year in 2024. That's insane.
Years ago, you could basically buy Tesla stock and expect it to just go to the moon,
Yeah.
and it would just continually do that year over year. Like if you just
Yep.
bought in, you're fine. And the last 2 years have been pretty rocky for that company in general.
It's been pretty rocky, but so truthfully, their stock is actually going up, and a big reason it's
Yes,
going up right now is because Elon has said, "Listen, I'm going to
speculation.
step away from the car company, and I'm going to focus on Doge, and I'm
Yeah,
not going to be involved so much with the car company."
you're right.
I will tell you, they've had a lot of issues when it comes to brand just branding in general. I mean, we've
Yeah,
seen people that have changed badges on their Teslas so that they don't look like Teslas anymore. They look like Hondas and
I mean,
Toyotas.
I don't know, man. Like at the end of the day, there's the biggest thing I've seen lately has just been the Tesla hate, man. There's been a ton of it,
There's a ton of
ton
Tesla
of
hate.
it,
And a
and
lot of it's directed at Elon because of, what he's doing
right,
politically.
yeah,
But what's
yeah,
crazy is there's a Tesla, facility they don't have showrooms. It's like a repair center down the
right.
street from my house. And I mean, pretty much on a regular, they have protests out there, talking about wanting to get rid of Elon and this and that. And what's crazy is you're seeing all these people vandalizing Teslas. And, truth of the matter is, for anybody who's listening to this, the person who bought the Tesla
They
probably
didn't do
doesn't
it.
share. Yeah, they
Yeah,
probably don't share the same political views. They may or may not, but they didn't do it.
they
They're
didn't
they're
do
not
it,
doing
man.
it. You don't need to mess up their car because of it, right?
Also, what did the car do? Right, the
The
car
car
didn't
did
do
nothing.
anything.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Innocent
like, come
innocent
on.
victim.
Yeah, it's like helpless victim. It can't even defend itself.
No.
Um, I don't know, man. Like the fact that their sales have slumped. I mean, that's obviously there's a lot of reasons outside of the automotive side of it that are truly what's causing what we're seeing.
There
Um,
is, and we're seeing EVs as a whole take a huge hit, right? Because
drop,
resale
man.
on EVs are terrible.
Oh, dude, they're heading
Um,
to the floor. Somebody said
yeah,
it the other day, and they're like, you could buy an EV and it will go to zero. Like the
it might.
value of it will go to absolute
You
zero.
and I talked about, I think a while ago on one of our podcasts, you and I talked about, was is where's the floor for some of these cars, right? And the answer is, could it be nothing, right? Could
Yeah,
it could it actually be that the car is, worth less than the parts that put it together, basically?
right. Yeah,
Um,
it
and it
becomes
it
just
you know
a
it
recyclable
seems that,
piece at
but
that
it
point.
seems that way. And on that point, we really don't have a great plan for recycling the EVs as they are.
Yeah.
So EVs aren't for everybody. We don't have the infrastructure to support a full EV fleet.
Right.
And there's still a lot of range anxiety and stuff like that. But if you look, a lot of these EV cars are getting better and better and better range and better support and that sort of thing. And the big issue was, I think Tesla was always planning just to kick the door open
Right.
and disrupt the market. And then all these other people are starting to step in, like Polestar and
Right.
Rivian and even Ford and Mercedes and all these other
And then
companies
they're also
doing
starting to
EVs.
see competition for cars we don't get, which are supposedly really good, is like the Chinese version of EVs.
Yeah. Yep.
And that competition wasn't there, 5 years ago. And
No,
I think that's
no.
making a massive difference in what they can build a car for versus what Tesla can.
I
Yeah.
agree, but like I said, you're talking about a company who's relatively young, right?
Yeah.
If you look at like Ford or Dodge or some of these other brands that have been around, 60 plus years, they've been making cars for 60 years, and they've kind of got a little bit better way of doing it, I guess. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't say they're doing it perfect because even they're getting recalls,
Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
it's just bad when you're seeing, the Tesla truck, for instance, right? The Cybertruck.
Right.
The Cybertruck missed its goal by 84% of the projected, sales for that vehicle.
That ain't a small number,
That's
man.
a huge number.
That is not a small number.
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And then the crazy part is, and you and I had to look this up. Somebody said
Yes.
this, and John was like, "That doesn't sound right."
It doesn't sound right. There's no way this is true.
Yeah, so
And
we
it
looked it
is.
up, and actually, if you go to Forbes, there's an article that says Tesla dealers are now refusing Cybertruck trade-ins, and essentially, they're having
That is
so
so
much
bad.
trouble selling new Cybertrucks that they're not even willing to take a used Cybertruck to have it sit on the on the lot, right?
Just picture this though. You go in, you buy the new Cybertruck right when it came out, the Cyber Beast. It was what, 120, 130, something like that.
Yeah, it was
It
high.
was a lot. And it's like, all right. And then, you're like, I'm gonna own this thing for a year, right? Make it 2 years. You're still within warranty, and you're like, hey, this one ain't working for me. I'm gonna trade it for a Model X, right? Not an option. Like, what?
No.
Wait a minute, hold on. I bought the car from you. Like, not an option. What do you mean it's
Yeah.
not an option? And the
No,
fact
I
they even
read
have the option
one
to turn
article.
that off blows
Yeah,
my
I
mind.
read one article. In fact, the Forbes article, if I remember correctly, says in there that some owners are reportedly pushing lemon law protection for the Cybertrucks just to get rid of them
And
because there's no other way that they can offload them.
I think that somebody had posted that the dealer is actually pushing people to lemon law the car.
They're pushing them in that
Which-
direction. Yeah.
Wouldn't that would be like a kickback? I don't think that would be a kickback to Tesla on lemon law. They don't make any money off that. They're going to lose money.
I honestly don't know how lemon law works. I mean, that
On
might
the
be something we should
backside.
do we should do a
We're
story
gonna deep
about,
dive
right?
into that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not sure
How
how
does
lemon law
lemon
works,
law
but
work? That's a good
basically
question.
Tesla's saying, "Hey, we're not going to take them back. If
Yeah.
you want, if you want them, go and deal with the lemon law." And so we're seeing, it calls out in that Forbes article. It says some owners are reportedly pushing lemon law protection to force Tesla to buy back the vehicles because there's
As
just
they
no other
should.
way to do it.
I mean, just
But
think
what's
as they should,
crazy,
though.
what's crazy right now is, and so take this for what it is. The report says Tesla is sitting on $200 million worth of revolutionary EVs that they can't sell. Now, I have no idea without, digging into it deeper as to what, Stellantis is sitting on, what Ford is sitting on, what Nissan,
So-
which coming up in another episode. Wait until you see what's happening at Nissan. Oh my God.
My gosh, man. We've talked about them on a few other episodes, and it's just like this thing is unraveling at
Yeah, it
at
got
the
out of
core.
control. But
But
it's interesting. So I wonder what all those people are sitting on vehicles that they're not selling.
So I
But-
know they go by day supply. So
They
it's
do go by
like
day
they have
supply,
a
yep.
120-day supply or something like that. And I I know that Stellantis is just piling them up.
They're towards the top. I think they were
Yeah.
last report I looked at. They were third or fourth. I think they were third.
That's crazy. And Tesla is a smaller company than these by a lot, and
By a
probably
significant amount. Yeah.
by a significant amount, but $200 million tied up in inventory that they can't move.
Well, and they said that Cybertruck transaction prices have plunged by 55% over the last year and 13% over the last 3 months. So the
Sounds
price
like I need to
for
use Cybertruck.
yeah, but then what are you going to do with it when you get it? You can't get
I'm
rid
going
of
to
it.
drive it till it's zero.
No one's going to want to buy it. You're going to drive it to what?
Till it's zero.
It might
And then
be
I'm going to
zero
turn it
next
into my
week.
dumpster.
No, it's really crazy because the current model is about $75,000, and on the base Cybertruck,
Yeah.
and you get a handful of models that still qualify for that $7,500 federal tax
the
credit.
tax credit and stuff.
So you're in like $60,000 range, and to think that the average dealership is hitting people at like 30,
yeah. Oh my
and
God,
saying we'll buy this back, we'll put this on the lot, we'll give you $30,000 towards a new truck.
Imagine nuking $30 in equity in a car, like just nuking it, just gone.
30 grand. That I couldn't even imagine that. Couldn't
And I
imagine.
mean, we play in some pretty expensive cars, and it's possible that could happen to our vehicles. But I guess I could stomach it more on a car that I want to keep around. Like. I guess to me, I can justify it, right? Like it's like
so. I mean, if you have a $300,000 car and you lose 30 grand, right? You lose you're losing 10%,
yeah,
right? If you have a $70,000 car and you lose 30 grand, you're almost 50%. That's like what 60 something percent, right? Of equity you still have left in the car.
I guess that's how I'm looking at it too. I'm looking at it as a percentage side more than a actual number, but. When you say I lost 50% of the value of a vehicle, that's tough to stomach right there.
I mean, my first question would be, was it a Maserati? And then my second question would be,
hey man, nothing. Anyways, the electric Tesla.
So here's what's crazy, and you pointed this out earlier, and this is something that not enough people are talking about. Is Tesla's still one of the best-selling EVs in the marketplace today?
So this was the thing that was weird to me. They were saying that they missed their mark by 85%. Okay, so that was a number, a pie in the sky number that they said, we're going to make this many. We're going to sell this many. And then they obviously started producing at that level, and they missed their mark. But they still outsold the Ford Lightning. They still outsold their the Hummer EVs, the Rivian. So... when you look at it in that aspect, they may not have missed their sales goal, but they definitely made their, overall goal, which was to outsell their competition, I would think.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, and I think it's common knowledge, right? I mean, Ford's not in the EV game, in the EV truck game.
Right. It's not their only thing.
Yeah, but very few dealerships can you go at and even find a Lightning, you know? Most Ford truck guys are buying Ford trucks. They're buying F-150 Raptors and F-250 this and that. I mean, I was just looking on Instagram when I was posting some stuff for the show.
Yeah, but Rivian guys, on the other end.
No, Rivian guys are. But you got to think Rivian when it comes to size, Rivian's even smaller than Tesla. Rivian is not a big company. They don't churn out a lot of cars. In fact, I just saw for the first time a Rivian commercial the other day. I was like, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
So, and I love the Rivian truck. I think if I was going to buy an EV vehicle right now, it would either be the Rivian R1T or the R1S. I like the R1S. Trucks.
I haven't ever driven a Rivian, so I don't know, but...
so I drove it when they first came out. I drove one of the, pre-production models, I guess it was, and it was great. The only thing I didn't like about that Rivian, which is a common theme on all EVs, is the single pedal drive, right? Getting used to that. Now, I will say, we did a huge loop in that car. I took off in the truck. I basically was using the one pedal drive.
Right.
And got to the point where I just got used to it.
Yeah.
And it didn't take me like a week. It took me like a trip around the test loop or whatever it was.
Yeah, when I drove the Cybertruck, it was the same way. Like you let off the gas, it would slow down, and you just get used to that.
Yeah.
and
So you
expect
got to
it.
kind of like
Yeah.
either constantly have your foot on the gas, or you can't cruise. You can't,
Yeah.
coast, if you will. But I mean, with that being said, yes, they outsold their competition, but that's not, that's not a ringing endorsement. It's not like, the,
Right.
Honda Accords outselling the Toyota Camry.
Right.
You're
It's
talking
comparing
about
apples
high
to oranges,
volume
I guess,
numbers.
to an extent.
Yeah.
To an extent, but I mean, but to think though that that Tesla is outselling a company that's 3 times their size in just that sector, it's kind of cool.
I mean,
It's
yes,
kind of
but
cool.
but there's only two vehicles in that sector, right? When it
Right.
comes to Ford, there's the Lightning and the Mach-E.
Right.
The Mach-E was originally shunned because everybody hated the fact that it was a Mustang variant,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I've driven the Mach-E and I've driven the Lightning, and I actually really like both. The Lightning, if for anybody who's ever driven an F-150, the Lightning is just an F-150 with an EV motor in it. So
Yeah.
it doesn't feel different when you're driving the vehicle. It doesn't feel like you're driving a different vehicle.
Right.
But you don't have the same luxuries that you have with internal combustion with the Lightning.
I'll
You
say
know?
this though, if Tesla really wanted to like just liquidate their inventory and sell a bunch of vehicles, they could do it on a lease program. They've got it figured out. I mean, the Model 3, you can lease the thing for like, I think it's like $1,000 down and $300 a month. Like,
Yeah.
I almost bought one. I'm still thinking about buying one. Like, do it signings like less than $2,000, and I'm in a Tesla as my daily. Like, sure, okay, and I get a brand new car for $300 a month. Yeah, let's go. You can't beat that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys that we've had on our show, shout out to Derek with Sector 32.
Yeah.
So Derek is a big internal combustion guy. He
Yeah.
is, if anything goes wrong with my Aston or McLaren, he's the guy that I refer to before I
Absolutely.
decide to make any big decisions. And, he works a significant distance from where he lives. And he made the decision a couple years ago to get a Tesla 3.
Yeah.
And he basically drove it until the lease ran out, and then got a new one.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And for him, it's really kind of like a disposable item.
Same.
You know,
I mean, that's how
he
most of my
doesn't have to
dailies
think
are
about it.
anyways.
He doesn't have to.
Yep.
He doesn't have to put any effort into it. He basically just gets up in the
Charge it at
morning,
home.
unplugs it, and drives to work, and then drives home.
Yeah.
And it's got enough range that he can do that.
Exactly. That's kind of been my thought process for a daily. I think a Tesla is a great daily if you live close. I mean,
if you're
10 minutes from
working
work.
within a
Yeah.
a decent radius of your house, then yeah,
100-mile radius.
it makes
I would
total
say
sense.
You're still fine. 60
Yeah, I mean,
mile
if you
radius,
did 50
maybe.
out and 50 back, or maybe
Yeah.
60 out and 60 back, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there are people who do that. I had to drive like 40 miles one way, when I was living in my old house, back and forth to work.
Yeah.
And I went from an F-150 at the time to a Ford Fusion hybrid.
Yeah.
And I got like 40 some odd miles a gallon. It was
Exactly.
wonderful.
Yeah. And that's how it was when I lived here and worked in Montgomery. I was driving 60 miles one way. And I consistently thought about it because we had chargers at work. And I was like, dude, that'd be perfect. I'd charge it at home, charge it at work, never have to stop.
But see, what's really funny? So when the first EVs came out, I'm thinking of like the Nissan Leaf, right? When the Leaf came
they
out,
were ugly. Everything was so ugly on that stuff.
It was ugly, but people jumped on that train. And the thing was, those things only got like 40 or 60 miles worth of range.
Yeah.
In like perfect conditions with the AC off and like, nothing else. And the problem was people were taking those cars and they were driving them, and like plugging them in at work, and they live like 20 miles from their house, right?
Yeah.
And they'd barely make it to work, and they'd plug it in because at the time we didn't have like the fast chargers.
Infrastructure, yeah. You didn't have
So they'd
that,
plug it in at work on like
Yeah.
a 110 or a 220 outlet, and it was just not sufficient. Now, so I will argue all day long that we still don't have the infrastructure necessary to have an all EV fleet, right?
I agree with that.
We still don't. We don't have. I would say, consumer, belief in
The EV, yeah. I mean, it's still not there.
EV in general, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have the consumer backing to say, okay, we're going to go all EV fleet.
You know, it reminds me though of like whenever it was like the diesel had done the full biodiesel stuff. Do you remember that?
Yep.
That came
Yep.
out and it was like the wave of the future, and it was like everybody's going to switch to this, and we'll be there in 5 years time. And then in 4 years, it was like this is all a scam. It doesn't work. Sorry guys, we were wrong. And then it was like, all right, then EV was the next thing, and it's like EV is going to be the way of the future. And now there's cracks in that foundation, man.
Yeah.
It's.
I mean, there's a lot of cracks in that foundation,
there's
right?
a lot
I mean,
of cracks in the foundation.
There's
that it's
so many
like,
things about EV that we didn't take into account when we were like, when not we, when they were charging behind EV. There were so many things that they didn't take into account. And the problem was, one of the things is it's hard to make a complete switch over to EV based on where we were.
Yes.
But like I said, credit to Tesla, because Tesla was and is a market disruptor, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't have the infrastructure. They didn't have the sales model, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they were the first company in a long time to say, we're not going to have dealerships.
Yeah.
Right? You want our car, we have a showroom, you can come look at it. But you're going to have to order it online,
There's pros and cons to that whole concept to me. There's pros and cons. Because I window shop. I go to every dealership all the time looking at cars. I'm that guy, man. I will pull up and be like, hey, that's a cool car. I'll get it next week.
Tire kicker over here.
I'm not that guy. I don't talk to anybody. Like, I'm just there by myself. In my head, like, mathematically, does this work? No, maybe not. We can make that work. So, I don't know, man. But
if
I
lived in the car 6 months out of the year, I could have this P1.
Yes, exactly. Mathematically, if I sold everything tomorrow, P1
I could
in
sleep in the Speedtail and we would be
P1
great.
in Adam's driveway. If I sold everything.
Perfect.
Yeah, it'd be great.
But what's really interesting about that is I'm with you, right? I do like to go to the occasional car dealership and just kind of see what they have, and I like to see the car in the metal. And a lot of times they'll upgrade it, they'll update, with the new body style or new interior, or new screens or whatever. And I like to see those things, right? Because that may influence my next car decision.
Correct.
But I'll tell you this, the problem that we have in today's market, and you and I have seen this in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
The problem we have in today's market is confidence in the dealership by themselves. Because today,
it's absolutely.
Yeah, today you can go and you've experienced this. So have I, right? I ordered, for those of you who haven't heard this story, I ordered a Raptor R 2.5 years ago.
Yep.
Maybe somewhere in that neighborhood. I ordered it off of Ford's website, build out all the stuff, ordered the stuff, blah, blah, blah. The deal with that truck is they only get a certain amount of allocation to each dealership.
Allocations are what eat us
up. So if the dealership gets an allocation, then if where you are up on the list, then you might get a phone call and they say, hey, we've got an allocation for this. Come in, we'll spec it together and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I had already spec'd the car. I'd already picked out the color.
Here's my spec. Send me the car.
Yeah,
we're good.
I'd already picked out the color. It was avalanche gray, just like our project truck. Which, if you haven't seen those videos, please watch them. We got a ton of them out there right now.
Hit them in the link below.
Yep. But I had an avalanche gray on 37s Raptor R.
Right.
I had the graphics on it and everything.
He checked every block.
I did, and I got a phone call from the dealership, and they said, "Hey, Adam." Great news!
Come on down.
We got an allocation for a Raptor R, and you can be the first Raptor R in Atlanta, right? And I was like, done. And they're like, it's going to be 40 over retail.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't call me back.
Hey, have a great. Come on down to Tricky Ricky's. We're here to take your money.
I'm not your guy, right? I mean,
the same thing happened to me, but
the thing is, like, they were going to get that, regardless. Even if I didn't buy it, which I didn't buy that truck, they sold that thing for 40 over, like, no problem, right? So it wasn't a thing. So my whole thing is, if I'm, not buying it and somebody else is, they're going to continue that behavior. So if you're Tesla and you're saying we don't have a dealer network, you want a car, you go online, you buy it. The price you see online is the price you're going to pay. Done. right?
Yeah.
No sneaky fees,
Yeah,
no
we're not
documentation
not
fees,
sliding
no
anything under
dealer
the
prep
rug.
fees.
Like, hey man, do you
Yeah.
want the weather mats? Do you want the cleaning supplies? Do you
But
want
I will
the,
say to
fairy
me,
dust that
that
makes the paint
model,
sparkle? We can get you in there. Don't worry.
that
Come on
model
down to
makes
Tricky
sense.
Ricky's.
That model makes sense, right? Having a
Yes.
direct to consumer model makes sense.
Yes.
And actually Ford talked about breaking out the EV part from the dealers and basically having a direct to consumer for just the EVs.
Correct. And the dealers lost their minds.
Lost
They
it.
wanted their cut.
Oh my
man.
God.
They want their cut.
Yeah.
These guys didn't become millionaires by not doing that. I'm just saying.
I mean, but that's true, right? So they wanted their cut in everything, you know. But the truth is, most dealerships make the majority of their money, or used to anyway, made the majority of their money in service, right?
And they still
But
do.
today they do, but
still do.
today there's so many opportunities to add extra, markups on top of these vehicles. They're making money hand over fist on some of these things. So again, market disruption, right? So Tesla disrupted the market and said, no, we're not going to have a dealer network. We're going to have Tesla branded repair centers. We're going to have Tesla branded showrooms. You can go and you can sit in the car, you can schedule a test drive, you can do all the things you need to do. But when it comes down to buying it, you're going to buy it from us. You're not going to go through a third party dealership.
Correct.
And again, to a point, that makes a lot of sense to me, you know, because then you're eliminating an inessential middleman. Really, that's what you're eliminating. You know.
So I again, I don't know what the future holds with this. I think that Tesla's going to be around. I don't think they're going anywhere. I'd love to see Tesla come out with a hybrid. I'd love to see that. I think that'd be crazy.
I don't think that'll ever happen.
I don't know, man.
I think they are on the full EV train,
and they're never going to get off that train.
I will say a couple of years ago, right? A few years ago, the thought of an EV period was just unheard of, right? And then Tesla stepped in the marketplace, and it was kind of like, meh, like, is this ever really going to work? And they did really well. And to your point, if you invested in Tesla at that point, you knew the stock was going to go up.
You were making money, man.
And so what's crazy about that is if you fast forward a little bit, we kind of went through another lull where everybody was like, were we really ready for full EV?
Yeah,
was that really what we wanted and all this stuff? And what's funny about it was a lot of the companies have said, no, we're never doing EV.
Yeah.
We're not going to do a full EV car. I mean, if you look at Toyota.
Well, there was also government
Toyota was one of the last. There was, but Toyota was one of the last people, or Lexus anyway, was one of the last people to have a full EV car.
Yep. And well, the other part too, though, is and this is something I forgot about, is Tesla didn't really make all their money off the cars. They made money off the credits that they would sell to other manufacturers like Dodge. You had the Hemi and the Hellcat and all that, so that they could be EPA compliant. And now, with the president we have now, EPA compliance is kind of getting a little back shove, a little bit like, hey, this is kind of a money grab. And maybe things aren't as transparent as they were, or as they should have been, And so here we are, and Tesla's losing a lot of money in that sector as well. So,
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just crazy because you and I reported a while ago that Tesla had a backlog of cars, right? And I will tell you, if you haven't seen it, it is one of our most controversial videos. People hated what we said in that video, and to be fair, we were very new to EVs and to it, and we were literally reporting on an article that we read, and John, you can back me up on this. Since then, we will never report on an article and not include it in the article in the show notes.
Yes, down below article, please. The Forbes one will be there, and more.
The Forbes one will definitely be there. But the thing is, that was one of our most controversial videos because the people who love Tesla came out of the woodwork and they said, "You guys are crazy. Like ICE is dead. EV is the way forward."
That was right before I think the tipping point, though. That was before the tipping point. It was like right after that. It was like, man, like it was pretty bad. It was early on.
The cars were starting to stack up, right? the article and even the video, I think we titled, Tesla's seen from space. So the article actually said that there were so many vehicles that were backed up on Tesla's lots that you could literally see it from space.
Yes.
And the thing is, we reported on it. We got hammered, right?
And that's okay. That's all right.
But the thing was, right, we weren't trying to be salacious about it. We were just kind of saying, hey, here's an article and here's what we find crazy
when
about
it was trending on Google was interesting.
That was really interesting.
That was interesting.
But since then, I think we've softened a little bit when it's come to EV and been more open to the thought of bringing an EV into the fold. And then you actually did a video with the CyberTruck.
When I test drove the CyberTruck, and I actually liked it. And one thing that I thought was interesting was how busy the Tesla dealership actually was. Like even with
Tesla
cars,
showroom, not a dealership.
Excuse me. Well, they sold the cars and they offered to sell me a car. So that, to me, dealership. Now it may be direct to whoever, but dealership. But I guess they were cutting out Tricky Ricky. But the thing was, like, the guy was so busy that I got locked in the back seat of the truck, and that's how that happened. Like, literally, he was so busy that he's like, "Hey, man, just check it out, whatever." And I jump in the back seat to video for everybody the front seat, and I'm locked in, and I'm like, "Oh crap, this was not expected." And
again,
so I videoed that
if you haven't seen that video, that's pretty funny because
good.
John is stuck in the back seat of this car and doesn't know how to get out.
It's my first time in a
locks were
CyberTruck.
on.
My very first time sitting in the seat of a CyberTruck, I get locked in the back.
Got locked in. But so I'll tell you, we've talked a lot about Tesla in this video, and we've talked a lot about EV in this video. And thanks for those of you who've sat through all of it and listened to two guys who know nothing about EV rant on forever.
Welcome to the party. There's more where this came from.
But at the end of the day, like I said before, love or hate Tesla, they were market disruptors, and that's what they did, and they did it better than anybody else. The Cybertruck, I believe, from day one was a misstep, and I thought it was ugly, and people think it's ugly, and it's hilarious because we've read all sorts of articles about people hate me in my Cybertruck, and people give me the finger when I drive my Cybertruck and all this stuff. But the thing is, the Cybertruck is very polarizing. There are people who think it's super cool, and there are people who think it's super ugly. There's nobody in between that's like, man, I can take it or leave it.
To me, it's a face only a mother could love.
Yeah, right.
Sum it up right
so,
now. Is it pretty?
I will tell you,
it's fine.
No, I will tell you that we should all kind of just see what happens next, right?
Yes.
When Elon steps away, does Tesla kind of recover? Is the reason that they haven't sold, that they have so many vehicles sitting there, is it because of the influence, because of the backlash from Elon's involvement with the latest presidential campaign, or is it just a matter of the fact that they don't have the market doesn't have a desire for a true all EV right now, that hybrids are the path forward? And I'm telling you right now, I believe that I love hybrids. I think a hybrid, if we were to look at a hybrid, we talked about this before, you're closing the gap on performance, you're extending the range of the vehicle, and you're still able to use the current infrastructure we have today. I will go down swinging saying that in the climate that we're in today, a hybrid is the best alternative to an ICE car. Period. Bottom line. That's it. That's all I got.
I guess we'll see. I mean, my thoughts on the EV, and I guess I'll sum it up with this, is that if they ever get to a point where it can go way further, like an astronomically, if they can go way further and go past what any ICE vehicle is ever going to be capable of, or hybrid vehicle is ever going to be capable of in range, I think that's when people will make the switch. Because at that point, it makes more sense. I don't even
think that's necessary, right? Because, like, if you think about my truck will do 500 miles on a tank of gas, right? A little over 500.
Yeah.
If you gave me an EV that I knew at 75 miles an hour with the cruise control, or 80 miles an hour with the cruise control set on the highway, right? If you gave me an EV that I knew I could do 500 miles in range in, then it would be fine. The catch is, if I pull off the highway in middle of nowhere Alabama, middle of nowhere Georgia, middle of nowhere Missouri,
Right. And you don't have access to a charger.
am I gonna
Yeah,
have
I'm with
access
that.
to a charger?
Right. I
And
agree
the
with
thing
that.
is, charging times are dropping,
Right.
like exponentially, right?
Right.
So you used to have to sit around for hours to get your car charged, and now you can charge it, in 45 minutes. But I mean,
Yeah.
the thing about charging in 45 minutes is that's still a long time.
The
It
hard
takes
part
a
for
couple
me
minutes.
to accept on any EV though is just the fact that it's outdated so fast
Yeah,
that it's like a cell phone. I get a new cell phone
it is.
every 2 cell phones, right? And I don't want to be like that with that specific car. There's cars that I plan to own the rest of my life, and
Yeah.
and that's kind of part of it. And I just know that is not an option on that car, not without a
Well,
major battery replacement and
if
or something.
if Bugatti can predict the future, they had an opportunity to basically just reskin a Rimac
Yeah, the
Nevera,
Rimac, yeah,
and they
yeah, and they
built
decided not
this
to.
tourbillon
Yeah.
that is a timeless design.
W16?
It's a no, it's
No,
a
it's V.
it's not a
It's
W16.
V16 or
It's a
V12.
V16.
Yeah, something unbelievably
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah,
So, but what's
timeless.
crazy about that is they built a timeless design, and if you look at it, they didn't use any EV stuff. They didn't even do digital gauges.
I love it.
You know,
I
so
love it. I'll tell you the one thing that dates
who knows?
like the one thing that keeps classy cars to me classic is the radio not being some massive screen. Like the old
I agree.
DB9s, man, I feel like are getting more and more like classy to me. And less technology, you just drive the car. But anyways, well, let's sum it up with Tesla. Obviously, they're going to be around. The Cybertruck stays, and and everybody is just going to have to live with it, right? I mean,
at the end of the day, we've got Tesla. Tesla's got to figure out a path forward, and so I think we're all going to wait around and see what that looks like. And does it take an upswing that Elon steps away? Was the Cybertruck? I mean, right now they're calling the Cybertruck one of the biggest automotive flops in automotive history. So, will that continue?
Edsel
Who knows?
would have something to say about that from Ford, I'm sure.
Maybe. But if you guys have made this long into the episode, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for watching our stuff. And hopefully you're subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe below.
Button.
Make sure you hit the bell so you get notified. We drop stuff all the time, shorts, long form videos, you name it. We've got some really cool stuff coming up. We're going to be going on location to some things here soon. So more stuff to come.
Absolutely.
Hope everybody enjoyed the show, and we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.
Peace.